refusal, potential amendments to the property strategy, and then seek some guidance on any additional information you might need before this report is brought back to Council. So these questions are: have all questions and concerns raised to date been answered? And then what further information do you need before this report is brought back? So we are in the no part of this, as well as the getting the feedback. So just some background. The council property strategy was adopted in 2015-2016, but in July 2023 a resolution was passed by council proposing to include a right of first refusal for mana whenua for any non-core property disposal. This report was brought back by Arthur in December 2023, where you asked for some more refinement, and we did some more work and engaged further with mana whenua and brought back a report in December last year where it was left on the table. So just to give you some oversight on the general feedback that we have received, over the time that I've been working on this, I have had discussions in person, via email, over the phone, with Moepuko Tribal Authority, Te Tūmata Kāhoki, Ngāti Tūkorehe and Rangitane. Generally, the feedback is positive to the amendment. I do want to just highlight that a lot of the feedback is that they view this as just one step of an overall process that they expect to be included in. As you'll be aware of in many other discussions, there are resourcing challenges for mana whenua, particularly when we're asking of something. And then, there was... This kind of feeds back into point number one on there, that there was the desire to be involved in identifying core versus non-core property. So prior to it coming to the property strategy, when that decision is made by council. So some considerations or questions that we have had from elected members in particular, prior to the report going to council, I just want to kind of highlight some things here. That it's proposed that the amendment wouldn't affect decisions or sales already made. So decisions around Levin Town Centre War Memorial Hall, this would not affect that. A key aspect is that it's not council's role to be the decision maker on who has more rights over land. Therefore, as you'll see in the proposed amendment, a non-core property would go to mana whenua, and they would decide amongst themselves who would come back and potentially have an interest in that property. And therefore, if a decision cannot be made by just one, it would go to the open market. There are some time frames included in the proposed amendment around, decisions back, on the different steps, as well as there was a request that we share our current disposal list, our current list of non-core properties, and then potential time frames that we might have on those in terms of when we're looking to dispose of those. So, my questions are: have all your concerns up to this point been answered? And are there any further requirements from the table that you would like us to do before we bring back this report, ideally in May?
Yeah, could we go back one slide, please, Lacey? Okay, so for me, we shouldn't even be considering this policy based on bullet point number 2. council's role is not to be the decision maker on who has more rights over land. So, from my point of view, and I think many others in the community would share this, basically anything, whether it's a law, a rule, a policy, anything that gives an advantage or a disadvantage to a person or a group based on ancestry, ethnicity, or culture is inherently race-based. So, for me, we shouldn't be making this policy on that basis. Now, and I'm just going to leave that there.
Thank you for your comment, and I have noted it. Can I just remind councillors that I'm not asking for a decision. This isn't for a decision. I'm just asking if you need me to do further work or require further information in order to make that decision later on.
And if I could just jump in also, this came out of a property disposal conversation, and as officers we were asked to go away and do this work from by council. So obviously we're not here for a decision today, but if there's a change, then obviously it needs to come back.
I wasn't actually trying to preempt a decision. I'm just pointing out something that's actually obviously wrong with the whole idea for me.
Because I'd like to see something, some work done around. I think council, my view, council should look at a mechanism where in terms of property perhaps having a strategic value, where it can be, or council have the right not to basically offer a particular property if it has a certain strategic value. And I'm thinking something like the process we're going through with the more relevant here, where it's really a strategic asset to council, and we were out looking for expressions of interest, which could absolutely still invite iwi to put a iwi group to put a proposal in, because we saw that as a strategic place in the community to help with the Element Town Centre development. This doesn't offer that opportunity. It's carte blanche. It's automatic. I would be really comfortable to see council retain the option to not offer it as first rights because of that strategic value a certain property may have. Because that could prevent a development in the community that may offer far more to the wider community than what an iwi group might have the intention for. If you understand what I'm saying, I just think we need to retain. Council needs to retain that option for the benefit of the wider community.
Can I just put a thought out there in response to that? Is that decision actually at a time when council is considering whether a property is core or non-core, and should that be within the decision-making process of maybe it is not core council, but it's maybe there's a third option, just as something to consider.
Great work. It's a good work you've done. Great work. It doesn't leave council that option that I can see. So again, go back to the memorial. If this was in play, we wouldn't have that option to go out unless he said they don't want it. Then we would have the opportunity to go and seek expressions of interest, as we did for a proposal to develop that area. So that's the bit that concerns me, that we might we're not going to retain that option to do that. Sorry,
Look, firstly, I think you've done a great piece of work, even though it was laid on the table. I tend to I'm hearing Ross, but I think you're right that council had already made a decision to put it on a disposable list through a proper process. But if we can capture what Ross has said, and that if it is core, so had the War Memorial Hall of Inn been identified as a key strategic asset for Levin Town Centre, then the council prior may not have made a decision to dispose of it in the way that they did, meaning it was going open market. That was pretty much the direction that I read in the council documents. So I hear what you're saying, Ross, but I think that's almost it's an intervention that's not required because we have determined that that asset is not core and it can be considered to be disposed of. I'm also heartened, actually by Sam, in that last conversation we had where he actually went full circle. So if I remember rightly, when we first spoke about this, we initially said it was actually just about sharing our disposal list to our iwi owner partners, and it was for them to determine if they wished to engage in an expression of interest. I never wanted us to delve or create a path where, certainly to Mike's point, council should have no role whatsoever in what the expression of interest looks like or where it comes from, and neither should we expect those two iwi to sit down together and work out a plan. It's a purely independent process. And Sam's actually said it at the last meeting. He came full circle. We saw all this detail. We thought, what's the rules between it? What's the tika that we're going to force upon the iwi to make a decision? And it all got thrown out the window. And we've come back to, I would consider, a very open, transparent, honest process that actually honours the relationship that I think we want to have with our iwi partners. We're not suggesting anything other than these properties are up for go. We're not really sure what's happening, but if you want to put an expression of interest in, you're more than welcome. If neither party do, it's going to carry on through the disposal process, so there's no loss to us. We're selling the property anyway. I think the fear I have is, let's use the Live in War Memorial Hall as an example. And citing what you said, Ross, you are right. Potentially that may not have been offered in the same way as it is under this policy today. But we would, I'm sure that we would deem and prioritise what strategic properties are as we're tracking it on. Probably more so now than ever. I mean, I think about Gladstone and the water one and how that conversation changed really quickly. And that a property we're going to sell, we actually found that we needed part of that property to support our water treatment plant. So, I get it. But what I'm heartened by here is that there's actually an ability to show a genuineness here. There's no accountability on us. It's actually all about the other person expressing their interest and being able to facilitate it or not. And I just think the way you've drawn the paper up has taken all of the political untransparency, blah blah blah, out of it. And my point, sorry, around the hall was, I think there is still further consideration around the value of an asset. So, Live in War Memorial Hall has a property value. We have a value in our mind as council of how important that is. I don't know how you put that into dollar terms, but we're also willing to negotiate with potential buyers or potential developers a sale price, and it may not be what it's worth on the open market. It may not be what another expression of interest might have brought to this table when they were seeking an expression of interest. So I'm just saying there are other dynamics out there, but if you overcomplicate a policy like this, then you actually overcomplicate the process. For me, the process is fairly simple, and it's not costing us anything other than opportunity to share. This is what's here. Yes, that's all.
I don't know. You're being nice to me today. Just on Justin's point, and I take a point, and but for me, it's not the dollar value of the Memorial Hall, Live in Memorial Hall. It's the value that development's going to bring this community for a long, long, long time that we might have lost if we're tied into an agreement like this, which by and large I'm comfortable with. I just think I just strongly want us to be able to retain
like a callback or
some, just when an asset's very strategic and we see a value of going to the open market to to allow a development such as that we have the right not to offer it to you that particular property. I just want to see that as part of the report, as part of the.
I disagreeing with you today, Ross. I don't think we need that mechanism because, we set the value and then negotiate the value, so it should be within those valuation discussions whether we want to see some further development in the property. As Justin said, if it's a non-core property and it's been put up for disposal, then it's going to be disposal. My question, though, is I think you've done a great job with a real tough issue, I think. I'm just wondering if there's something that needs to be expanded on in between points 6 and 7, and possibly 8, that if you do have expressions of interest from 2 iwi, that you'll accept the highest value.
So rather than it go to the open market, that instead we would just...
Highest price.
I think that just on the highest price thing, I'm just trying to pick up on the commentary that you made, Ross, and then your reaction to that, Justin. So my advice and officer advice when this comes back, we probably wouldn't advise you to use the word strategic, and that's without becoming the bureaucrat in the room. Strategic asset is a term used under the Local Government Act, and when we describe something as a strategic asset, it sits in our significance and engagement policy, and it triggers a whole lot of stuff in the Local Government Act, which would actually become prohibitor to this process. And so if we use the Live-In War Memorial Hall as an example, that's a non-core asset, but it's also not a strategic asset under the Local Government Act. Because if it was a strategic asset, which it was prior to 2015, it would require a full Section 83 long-term plan amendment to go through the process we're just going through. And Council did that back in 2015, and it removed the Live-In, Foxton and Shannon War Memorial Halls off the strategic asset list. Another example is pensioner housing. When we owned the pensioner housing portfolio, it was a strategic asset, and so we had to do a full long-term plan amendment. But I hear the sentiment. What I think I'm hearing from you is this idea that at the moment, a core principle of the property strategy is best financial outcome for council. There are going to be times where it might not be. I know this isn't what you just said, Councillor Proctor, but there might be times where it might not be best financial outcome for council, because you want to weigh that up with having an influence over the outcome as well. So another example of that right now is the Live-In War Memorial Hall, or it is, for example, Salisbury Street Car Park. Like, if council doesn't care what goes on there, then you want the highest price. But if you actually care, if you want to influence the outcome, then there'll be a financial sacrifice in that negotiation process.
Policy, though. I kind of think that's what I fear imposing on just an iwi policy.
So correct. If I could just finish, Councillor Proctor, what I was going to suggest is that rather than that notion around strategic asset or strategic alignment sitting in the iwi first rights of refusal schedule of the property strategy, it's in the property strategy at the top an acknowledgement that there will be instances where council's decision around disposing of an asset is not just for financial gain, but it is to advance its strategic priorities as outlined in the long-term plan. And that might be when you don't use this process, or it might be you say that's not when it's just about price, it's about price and outcomes.
I'm going to jump in here. I think that's a dangerous precedent to put with this policy. It should be in the overall disposal policy, not just this.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, Jonathan. So this policy is just a schedule within the broader disposal strategy. I'm saying make the change at the disposal strategy, and that's all. That's the advice I'd offer if you're wanting to follow the lead of how Ross and Justin started framing that up.
Monique pretty much took what I was going to say. I think I totally agree, and I'd do it like that as well. But it is making sure that our community we're getting the best value, and it's not necessarily going to be the highest value, but we are doing the best for our community as ratepayers, because effectively we are using this as an income stream, and it's documented. So we've got to make sure that as far as budget implications, if you like, it meets them. But we are trying to achieve obviously the max, and I don't know how that's sort of framed up, but it's but I think as Monique's mentioned, it needs to dovetail into that other stuff as well, because we need to get the desired outcome.
So does that stuff need to be illuminated in here that it links to something?
My question was, is there any consideration given to existing leasees of non-core property? Because if we are disposing of non-core property, but there's an existing leasee of that building or land, then this could actually have quite a significant impact in terms of what they do, and so I just wonder, how would they be recognised in this process?
Bernie, before she answers, can I just give you one example? What happened with the Fox and Beach Scout?
I'm thinking more, to be honest, of the buildings we've bought in Oxford Street here. One day we may not use them, and they'll be then offered. We decide to get rid of them because we're not pulling them down, or we're not reshaping them, or whatever, and they are being leased. So what happens? Why, would a tenant I would believe would have some sort of rights, if you like, in terms of, Well, yeah, So I'm sorry to make this personal, but a few years ago, the land under my business was owned by council. Now, when we did that property disposal process, it was offered to, and there were 6 or 7 of us down the street that were offered first the right to buy that land. And if someone came along and bought the land under my business, what would be the point of me having a business when I didn't own the thing? And so all I'm asking is that there be some sort of consideration given to that sort of example.
Kia ora, just my response to that is, if this council deems it to be non-core, that is not iwi's responsibility or the leasee's responsibility. That's a decision that I understand this council makes. Is that not correct? So council decides what are non-core assets. So while I empathise with what you're saying, that's like saying what iwi shouldn't have first right of refusal, because council decided it was a non-core asset, but it's their policy. So I'm just trying to understand from a business point of view, at what point does council say, well, actually your rights mean more than their rights, even though we have a policy that says, but that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
To do it is all I'm saying is that it could be something that raises its head if this policy.
Almost started delving down that path, Bernie, when we talked about the iwi, and that there needed to be an agreement about how that process happened, and that's why we've steered away from that completely. And I think you're right. There is a process in place, but I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm just not sure how you.
And maybe just to kind of jump in here, I can't think of any examples like that would happen again, because there's very, very few. But an example I would give is Foxton Beach freeholding account, where there are some leasehold properties where the lease does provide for the leasee to have first rights to purchase that property. And we've had some in the last couple of years where the people leasing that property have purchased the home. And the property strategy speaks to that. It speaks to those occasions where existing lease arrangements provide do provide first rights, and that lease agreement will always trump any policy that council puts in place.
So, I guess.
Sorry, Rogan.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, I got a bunch of things to say. So on Ross's request about, mechanism where a property has strategic value, this policy doesn't at all prevent council making specific resolutions to go to the open market even. Given that this only applies to items we have made resolutions as non-core property for disposal, we already have this list of non-core property that's marked for disposal. Council's option to prevent things from being disposed to iwi is to not put more things on the non-core property for disposal list. That's the way around it. If you want a way around it, that's it. Don't mark property as non-core for disposal and it won't go through this process. That's the easiest backdoor I can see if you want one. The first line in the thing says this only applies when by
Rogan, we can't hear you.
I can see Councillor Proctor's clause about letting iwi outbid each other privately, but I don't think this should be. Oh, that's a shame.
We can now.
Cool. Councillor Proctor's clause about iwi letting people outbid each other privately. I don't think this should be our position to pit iwi against each other. I think the current design encourages them to strategically not battle and to make concessions and to let each iwi buy some property potentially to avoid it going to the open market, as would be a common goal for all of them. Yeah, Monique already covered that any legal requirement about leases is already captured. We don't need anything extra for existing leases. It's a weird question coming from Bernie in particular. Yeah, that's me.
Can I just respond, Rogan, and say you are setting iwi up to be in a competition anyway? There'll be a point in time where, multiple iwi may want a property, and you're going to have a mechanism for this council to work through it. And there's no mechanism there at the moment. And so, council's just going to be put in an awkward position of accepting one over the other.
The mechanism is it goes to the open market, and in the open market, whoever wants to pay most for it will pay most for it.
Well, what's stopping the iwi
And
having the same sort of open market process as well?
Sam, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Brent. This conversation is just reinforces for me that property disposal decisions and then process is complex and nuanced, and that, like, for me right now, the amendment to the policy is totally deficient. There's too many gaps. It doesn't actually align or integrate properly with the parts of the policy that set the overarching principles. Like, it's just so piecemeal and ad hoc. And for me, I'll reiterate, and Justin's already referenced it. Like, for me, this is just this is an overcomplicated solution. We could right now just send a list of these properties to the iwi partners and say, hey, we're just no promises, but we're really interested to know what properties might you have an interest in, either as an interest for whether how it's disposed or what it might be used for, whether you're interested in purchasing it, whether you're interested in it for some other reason, because there are different layers of interest. And in fact, the iwi partners could right now make a lagoima and request this list anyway. I just don't know why we are overcomplicating this. It's just so frustrating that we are. Yeah, I mean, it just. I just don't see any way. In the conversation's now turning to, what ifs this, and good policy making considers different scenarios and considers the right settings. And for me, we've just not followed a good process in terms of now elected members throwing in a whole lot of different stuff. And I think it just shows how unworkable how ill thought out the concept is, and that we're trying to introduce a solution that is like a one size fits all when there is not going to be a one size fits all outcome, because that's not what we're after. We're after bespoke solutions, and it starts with communication and understanding what interest there might be from iwi or any other partners, whether it's leasees or other people that might have an interest in properties. But it just starts with sharing the information. So at this stage, I don't need any further information. I'm simply saying I just don't think that the policy settings as proposed are workable. They certainly don't cover off the issues that I've raised in the past in terms of caveats and having real clear understanding of what the impact and unintended consequences are. So, yeah, I mean, bring it in May, and obviously we'll debate and discuss it then. But I don't think it's recoverable myself.
So then, does that,
Sorry.
That's a shame after spending 22 months kicking it down the road and not contributing.
It's not my fault, Rogan.
I have a question for you, Sam, and I just want clarity. Could you see anything within the property strategy which would provide solutions to all the nuances that you see that could come up?
Well, it's given all of the things that people are suggesting and asking and questions that are being posed, it's like a comprehensive review of the whole property strategy, because one part affects another part. And so that's why this whole proposal right from the beginning seemed like an overreaction or an overcomplication to what was actually trying to be achieved. Because, as I say, there's the whole sentiment of maximising the value or the return from sale of a surplus asset, and the whole conversation dialogue that just happened between Nina and Bernie really alarmed me, because essentially what we're saying is that we are promoting one group's of interests over another, and I'm not sure that that's a core principle underpinning the policy, because that's fundamentally at odds at saying here's a process that we go through to deem something non-core, it's surplus to our requirements, and our then main objective is to maximise the return of that asset. That doesn't mean that's not incompatible with actually understanding what partners might have an interest in a property and say, yes, we would love to purchase it, or yes, we would love to have input into how this might be released to market. That stuff's not incompatible. But for me, the way in which the policy amendment has been framed, it ignores a whole lot of the things that people have raised, and it's nuanced and it's complex, and it doesn't proactively deal with those things.
Could I just directly respond to the it's as easy as sharing information with our iwi partners? I want to give the table assurance that there are many examples of where we have shared with our iwi partners information about our disposal list and what is coming up. So, for example, last year we laid out, here are the properties we think that we're going to sell this year. Is it as comprehensive as the list that we distributed yesterday? No. Could we do a better job? Yes. But I suppose I want to, I'm hearing your frustrations, Councillor Jennings, but I just want to make it really clear that as officers, you gave us mandate by passing a resolution and you asked us to go frame up this work. That's what we've done. I hear the criticism around it, from your perspective, not having gaps. I suppose here's the opportunity because we'd heard the concern around gaps around town centre, around retrospective, and around when iwi have different views. We've heard tonight a deficiency around when it's an asset that has strategic alignment to council's core priorities. I just want to make sure that we're not setting staff up to be in yet another position where we bring the third report back to council and it's made to look like staff have not done the job, because we've delivered on the resolution of council and the multiple opportunities we've given to elected members to try give us guidance on what is clearly a really contentious matter. So I just, if there is some clearer, sharper, what is the exact deficiencies so that we could seek to provide that advice, then I'm sure Lace and Brent will be happy to do that.
Yeah, Monique, and I apologise if it's coming across as criticism of staff, because it's not. I'm not criticising staff for not having done stuff. What I'm saying is that ultimately it's elected members giving direction to go away and do a policy change, and I'm saying the policy change is unnecessary. The direction could simply be share a list of properties with iwi partners, and then it's surely like we're getting the outcome that we want. Like that's the frustration for me. It's not saying that staff haven't done stuff. So I apologise if that's how it's coming across. For me, it's because we've never given that direction for staff to do that at all. But what I'm saying, and I'm trying to challenge my elected member colleagues to say is, what is the outcome that you're actually trying to achieve? Because from what I hear, the policy solution and the policy amendment that's being proposed is kind of it's not the solution. or it's an overcomplicated solution that doesn't capture the nuance and complexity that some of these decisions create. And so that's my challenge. That's the frustration, is that, and I heard Rogan, obviously we are further down the track, but elected members have to be clear about what they want. And I wasn't the one that put this on the table. Other elected members did. And so they have to be really clear about what they're trying to achieve. They have to persuade their fellow elected members that it's the right thing to do. And at the moment, I'm saying that they haven't done that.
Sam, I'm going to respond to you. This is John here, and say that, I think the challenge was, even though we do share stuff with iwi partners, it's providing an opportunity for them to actually engage more appropriately and to build some more trust and possibly some capacity within their economic strategies for iwi as well in this space. I think that's what we started off this journey about. So we could share stuff with whoever we want, but it doesn't guarantee them a place to be able to participate in the process in a fair and equitable way. And I think that's what we're doing with this strategy. I know where you're coming from, Sam. Yes, we are creating privilege. I know you don't like that, but that's okay.
Yeah, we're into debating now, which is we've really got to sharpen it. Is there any more questions we need answers to? Yeah, I'm happy with where we're at and some useful feedback tonight. So bring it on. Let's have the debate, make the decision.
I take the call, and I like your guidance, Monique. I think it was really good advice to the table. So let's just carry on the journey.